Alright, welcome back to our unit recaps, where in this one we will be going through Colonization, our third unit of the year. Remember, colonization is when a country will go off and take land somewhere else for themselves, and this picks right back up where we left after Unit 2, where England, France, and Spain have explored and reached the New World, and now they're gonna colonize it. Specifically, we're talking Spain, France, and England. So we'll see Spain take some land where those green circles are, more specifically Mexico, Central America, South America, Florida, California, and the US Southwest. And Spain will go into that large amount of area and focus on conquering it. France will also grab some land, as we see over there in the blue, where they will take Canada and Middle America. They'll go down the Great Lakes and Mississippi River, but France was a little bit more social. They weren't focused as much on conquering as they were with mixing and trading with the Native Americans. And finally, we have England, who will take land as well, and they will end up colonizing the eastern part of where the U.S. is today. They'll end up taking the 13 colonies. And so we have these European countries taking land, and we end up with a map of the New World that looks like this, where France has all that blue land, Spain has all that green, and England in the red. And so, for the first time in this, we are actually going to get off of the world map, and we're going to look at specifically the United States. This is the east coast of the United States, where England is going to start setting up its own colonies. We're going to zoom into what specifically the country of England is doing. And they start off with grabbing land in North Carolina. They set up the Roanoke colony. This is the colony that was considered lost. So they settle the Roanoke colony for glory. They go to grab land before Spain can. The governor of the colony leaves to go get supplies, and when he comes back, he does find that the colony has completely vanished. England's first attempt at colonization has failed. But we do get some more. We get the Jamestown colony. This is the English second attempt at forming a colony in the New World, and they go there with the goal of finding gold to get wealthy. So we have these explorers who believe that they can get wealthy, but instead are met with a lot of struggles in the New World. Lack of food, lack of water, lack of supplies, diseases, and the Jamestown colony does almost fail as well. Jamestown will enter into what's called the starving time. Water shortage, starvation, lack of supplies, conflict, diseases, and it will take a few really important things to save that colony. We have a fixed relationship with the Native Americans. This is actually what the story of Pocahontas is based off of. Pocahontas was a real person. She was the daughter of Chief Powhatan, who was the nearby Native American chief, and the fact that they were able to fix a relationship between the Powhatan tribe and Jamestown does save them. They also have to find a way to make money. While Jamestown was originally a colony meant to find gold, there's no actual gold that they find in Jamestown, so it takes them learning how to grow cash crops, like tobacco, that they can sell for money. And finally, the third reason that Jamestown is able to be saved and become a successful colony is that it gains a structure, it gains rules, and it gains an early version of democracy called the House of Burgesses, where colonists do elect people to make laws for them. The third colony we see is the Plymouth colony. These are separatists who wanted to leave. They wanted to separate from the Church of England. That's who the Pilgrims are. And we learned about this back in our last video, where certain people are beginning to protest the Catholic Church. People are starting to believe that it's corrupt, so they leave to go find a place with religious freedom. Plymouth will also face some struggles early on, but they end up with similar success stories where they become friendly with the Native Americans, they learn how to work the land, they form their own system of government, and this is where we get what's called the Mayflower Compact, an agreement between the Pilgrims of the Plymouth colony to work together, make decisions, pick leaders. We get a relationship between the Pilgrims and the Native Americans, and this is where the story of Squanto is, a Native American who taught the people of Plymouth how to survive and how to work the land. That's how Plymouth will become successful. Now, those three colonies, those three starting points, Roanoke, Jamestown, Plymouth, will eventually expand. England will eventually own the 13 colonies over on the eastern side of the United States. And as you can see in the map, we do separate them into 3 different regions. Each region having different geography, each region having different lifestyle, different values. We have the New England colonies, who are based mainly on religious freedom. This is where Separatists, these are where Puritans, people who are trying to find a place to practice their religion, get away from the English Catholic Church, are going. This is also where we find what's called the Fundamental Orders of Connecticut, which is the first written constitution that we find in the English colonies. It does guarantee freedom of religion. Those yellow colonies are the middle colonies, New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Delaware. Those were the most diverse of the sets of colonies. This is where the Dutch would originally take and name New Netherlands, but the English would get it from them later on. This is where the Quakers are. That's a religious group that believes in no violence. And this is also where you find indentured servitude. People who can't afford to come to the New World getting their voyage paid for, and in return they would have to work for free in order to repay that debt. And then we get the southern colonies. Those are those green ones. Those are mainly based on farming. This is where they're growing cash crops to sell, which unfortunately had the effect that this is where you would find slavery in the 13 colonies. The 13 colonies would develop, though, into its own set of governments, and they have kind of a baby version of representative democracy. Representative democracy is a system where people are able to vote for leaders, and then those leaders make decisions for them. It's a democracy because the people still have power, but it's considered a representative democracy because you're voting for people to represent you. And the way this looked in the 13 colonies was a body of people that were voted on by the colonists. So if you were a member of the 13 colonies, you could vote for your own leaders. But you still had the king, and you still had a body of leaders that the king picked himself. And this is kind of what this led to, is where colonists still had power, they still had a say, they still could vote for things that they liked, but the king was still present. If the king said no, he was still able to cancel out what the 13 colonies wanted. He still had ultimate control, which left the 13 colonies feeling pretty powerless. And it would take certain movements like the Great Awakening, like the Enlightenment, to re-inspire the colonies. The Great Awakening revived people's faith in religion, so they got their sense of purpose back. The Enlightenment was a movement based on logic, which, to the colonists, involved the idea that freedom of thought, freedom of expression, freedom of speech, these were also logical conclusions that they can come to. So the 13 colonies get re-motivated, they gain these values from these two movements, and are able to push more towards their own freedom. Economically, what they followed was an idea called Mercantilism, This is the idea that if you want to become powerful, you need to get money. And in order to get money, you need to trade. So the 13 colonies started to try to make their own things, grow their own crops, so they can sell more things than they are buying. This way they could bring money into the 13 colonies. Unfortunately, while colonization did lead to positive things like democracy being brought to the New World, it also had negative consequences. We see the Atlantic slave trade from the last unit. We see the brutal conditions of slavery, and we see the decline of the native population because of conflict, and mainly because of diseases that would result from colonization. But now we have some of our key notes from this unit. Europeans raced to grab land in the New World, and they set up their own colonies. When we zoom into what England is doing specifically, that's where we see these 13 colonies being formed. Roanoke, Jamestown, Plymouth, and then we get different regions afterwards. The New England colonies, the Middle colonies, and the Southern colonies. We also see the seeds, the early versions of American democracy and the early versions of our independence thoughts being formed. The Mayflower Compact, the House of Burgesses, early governments where people had a say and people could vote. Fundamental Orders of Connecticut, the first written constitution. We see representative democracy, and we see a push for freedom coming from the Enlightenment and from the Great Awakening. Thank you for watching the recap of Unit 3, our recap on colonization. I hope this helps in your review.